Samaritan isn't just bad, it's pure, raw, unfiltered, absolute garbage. You'll find out why. Samaritan was released on the 26th of August 2022 and it stars Sylvester Stallone as the titular hero. Now, I'm just going to say this right off the bat. When you are in the corporate world, for starters, when you are 60, you're asked to retire, right? When it comes to being a creative, yes, you can still do it for some time, but where am I getting at with this? Sylvester Stallone is 76 years old and he's playing a superhero. Like, honestly, it's hats off to the man because not many 76-year-olds can, move as agile. And while I know a lot of the things that involve fighting and all of that will be done by a stunt double, but really, hats off to the man. So yeah, it was good to see Sylvester Stallone playing Samaritan, the titular hero in this movie. Now let me get to the pros. Now for the pros, there are none. Yeah, I'm not joking. There are no pros for this movie. I viewed Sylvester Stallone and pretty much that's it. And here is why. See, the character Samaritan, right? When you see the trailer, right, it was meant to be this hero who had a twin named Nemesis, and they were on two sides of the law. Samaritan was a good guy, Nemesis was a bad guy, and then they fought. So that was the backstory. They fought, and then it was presumed that they both died, but people still believe that Samaritan lives. But then, at the very least, Nemesis is dead because whatever bad things he wanted to do, he had stopped. Now you will say, okay, that's the backstory. Ooh, this looks good. Let's move on, right? But no. Now, if you say a movie sucks, or a series, or any form of media sucks, right? In my opinion, it always starts with the script. So let me start with the scriptwriter. The scriptwriter deserves to be kinged, and I'm not joking. So when you have any form of media, first and foremost, you think of the script because the script is the foundation. It builds the entire world, the premise for it. That's why even when you have a work of fiction, like say The Lord of the Rings or something like that, you started with a book by Tolkien and then it was brought to the real world. So you understand what I'm saying? So now, the same thing applies to this. I don't think they really thought through this scripting process. I understand that money needs to be made. I get that. But I don't think the scripting process is really thought about. And that's why I think the scriptwriter needs to be kinged. Now, when you king the scriptwriters, initially, it's funny because I did some further reading on this movie when I was done. And I realized I found out that this movie was meant to be released in 2020 in the cinemas. Honestly, for their own sake, it's a good thing they did not release in the cinemas because this movie would have bombed very poorly in the cinema. Yes, it was MGM that released it, but then, now Prime Video bought MGM. That's Amazon bought MGM, so now it got released on Prime Video. I sincerely feel like this was the best thing that could happen to this movie because the writing was bad. It was terrible. The actors, it now made the actors also look very terrible. And I'm talking Sam Clary played by Jason Walton, Pilu who played Cyrus the antagonist, even Sylvester Stallone himself. From the dialogue to the action, oh god, don't get me started on the action. The CGI was horrible. And here's the thing. I'm usually very careful when I talk about these type of things. Why? Because actually I do this work, and for those of you that know me personally, I do this work. And to be honest, for you to see say a second of CGI, right? Someone has worked on 25 frames a second at the very least, or 24 frames, or even 29.97 frames. So do you understand what I'm saying? And a frame is an image, so that means someone worked on this thing frame by frame. It took a group of people time, energy, effort to actually work on something that you are seeing on screen. So when you talk about 10 seconds, you're talking about 10 times 24 at the very least. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of time that went into this thing. That's why I know whenever I do work like this, I know that every single frame must count. Do you understand what I'm saying? But then in this movie, and I am not joking, the muzzle flash, that's the lights, the fire that you see when a gun is shot, from the muzzle flash to the fire in the building, everything about it just screamed low quality. It was horribly done. It was like, in my mind I was like, the people behind this thing, while I get it that maybe budget might have been a thing, but I'm like, is it that you people were rushed? And if it was about being rushed, this movie should have been released in 2020. So I don't think it was a time thing. So it's like you people don't take pride in your work, or they just like to hire someone who just got into film school and is just trying out their hands on something so that they will now say they've worked on something that is now on Prime Video on their resume, because I just did not understand what the thinking was. I mean, in my opinion, I don't think they thought. And honestly, it's really sounding, this is not the way I talk. You guys know the way I review movies, and if this is your first time on this channel, I don't normally bash movies like this. I try my best. I try my best to be conscientious with the words that I use. But sincerely, it took me 2 days to finish this movie. That's how bad this movie was for me. Like, I had to take a break. If I wasn't watching this movie especially to get to the end and review it, and maybe it's a near OCD behavior of mine that whatever I start, I always love to finish, I would have skipped this movie. Like maybe honestly 10 minutes in, I would have said, nah, I'm done with this movie. It took me 2 different viewings, and when I said 2 different viewings, 2 days, it did not mean that in that day I did not take a break, because I did take a break. That was how much effort I had to consciously put in order to watch this movie. And this review is beginning to sound like a rant. That's why I really quickly want to wrap it up, because everything about this movie just sucked, and I'm not joking. See, and also when it comes to, okay, now I've talked about the CGI and the script and the acting, also the editing. There were some things in this movie, there were some scenes that you're like, if this already happened before, why is this scene now in the movie? Like, this scene should have been put earlier in the timeline during the editing process. So that was the thing. It was like, it was just jumbled up all over the place. The convictions for the characters, the Sam Clary character, the 13-year-old boy, was just written to be very annoying and non-sitting, because there are instances, for example, that involved him having to sort of like move with a bad crew, right? And the fact that he kept going back to them made no sense. Yes, his mom was struggling and money was tight, but that wasn't enough conviction with the way this thing was portrayed. There wasn't enough depth in the character. The antagonist that wanted to create chaos in the city, the kind of chaos that he was creating. So many things about this movie made no sense. I am not joking. It was beginning to feel like my IQ was dropping when I was watching this movie. It was this year, and I've seen some pretty bad movies. Like, if you think Morbius was bad, watch this movie. This movie takes the crown. I know Morbius got a lot of hate online because it's tied to the Spider-Man franchise and many things are tied to the MCU as a whole. So even if it's outside of the MCU, people will compare with some of the MCU greats. So I can understand that. But trust me, this movie is worse than Morbius. I am not even joking. Like, I am absolutely not kidding. I am not exaggerating. I watched this movie and it felt very insulting to everybody watching. It felt like such a mess, this movie. Honestly, I try to be as objective as possible with every review I make, and right now I know I sound very passionate and it might seem like I am being emotional, but trust me, I am being very objective right now. This movie is not worth your time. If you've not seen this movie, skip it. If you've seen this movie, you're probably as furious as I am. And if you are not, honestly, I'd love to know in the comment section what was a redeeming factor, a redeeming quality for this movie for you, because I sincerely think that this movie is not worth anybody's time and it sucks. And it's not even worth the time of the actors, but it's just that everybody needs a paycheck. So yes, if you check the end credits, of course it's long. There are people, actors, cast and crew, everybody, right? But then this movie was terrible. That's just the truth. As a rating, it gets a 0.5, and the reason why it even gets that 0.5 is because something was short. That's just it. Doesn't even get a 1 in my opinion. It gets a 0.5 over 10. It's going to be probably, I think this is our lowest rated movie ever on the channel, because see, I can get it when your story has no plots, right? But then your CGI is just crazy. Like, it's just you're like, this is a lie, but this lie, I like the lie. But no, CGI was poor, story was poor, everything about this movie was terrible. I'm not going to lie, every single person who acted in this movie has acted in something better in their career. And I'm not even talking by a margin. I'm talking about whatever it is they consider their worst movie was better than this. Honestly, and that's just it for this review. It sucked. It just absolutely sucked. It was terrible. Yes, and my review / almost rant is done. It gets to 0.5, like I said. Honestly, maybe a 0.4 if possible. It just wasn't. It wasn't worth watching, really. I think they should have done a better job with the entire movie as well. Everything. And yeah, that's it for this review. If you like what you watch, don't forget to share, subscribe, like, comment. Check out this video or this video next to see some of our other drop reviews on the channel. It's been Tech for GVNNaija. Live long and prosper.